Hello children, happy to see you again. I am Dakshayani from Bharathidhasanar Matric Higher Secondary School handling biology. Happy to see you again children. Today we are going to see 10th standard biology chapter 15. The name of the chapter is nervous system, and in the nervous system, in this session we are going to discuss about the central nervous system. So let us do a recap what we studied in the previous session. In the previous session, what are all the things we discussed children? We discussed about the response to stimuli. Yes, very good. We discussed response to stimuli. We discussed what is response to stimuli, and next we discussed about the structure of neurons. Structure of neurons, and then the other parts such as neuroglia and then the nerve fibers. Nerve fibers. And then we discussed about the structure of neurons and then the types of neurons. Types of neurons based on the structure, function and presence of the myelin sheath. In this chapter, we are going to study about the transmission of impulses. What do you see from this children? It's a web like, right? So these are all the neurons. This is how our nervous system looks. It is like a web. Right, connection, all the neurons are interconnected to each other and the impulses are transmitted. And now we are going to see how the impulse get transmitted from one neuron to the another. So just look into this picture children. So this is a dendrite of one neuron. So it receives impulse and this impulse is transmitted to the axon to the another neuron. Like this, just you see the impulse get transmitted like this. So the impulses, the neurons with the help of dendrites. With the help of dendrites. What is a dendrite we studied children? Dendrites is the branched structure. These branched structures we say it as a dendrites. These dendrites receive impulse from the sensory neurons. Sensory receptors are present in our sensory organs. With that they receive the impulse and they transmit the impulse to the axon. From dendrites it is transmitted to the axon, and at the axonal end what is present? Terminal branches. Yes, the terminal branches is present here. In that synapses, synaptic knob. And from there it is transmitted to the dendrites of the another neurons. Again from the synaptic knob it is transmitted to the dendrites of another neuron. This is how the impulse get transmitted from one neuron to the another neuron. So from this one important question is asked children. Just look into the image. This is a myelinated neuron and this is a non-myelinated neuron. Here the rate of impulse is very fast, but here the impulse is very slow. Why? Because the impulse is very fast, because here myelin sheath is present. So what happens? We say it as saltatory conduction. Just know it children, it is not given in your book. Saltatory conduction. We say it as saltatory conduction, so that the impulse jumps from one myelin sheath. We say it's nodes of Reinwehr, right? So it jumps from here and it reaches very fast. But in the non-myelinated neuron there is no nodes of Reinwehr, so that the impulse has to travel throughout the length of the axon. So here the information is very fast in the myelinated neurons and the transmission is delayed in the non-myelinated neuron. Now we are going to see how the impulse is transmitted. Just look into this picture children. It is a synaptic knob of one first neuron and this is the dendrites of the other neuron. So, the information, the impulse from the axon is transmitted to the another neuron, and this point we call it as a synapse. The junction between the two neurons we call it as a synapse. Just look into this. The impulses reach the end and the informations are transferred to the another neuron. So, this is how the impulse get transmitted from one to another. And now we are going to see what is transmitted. You can see some molecules, right children, like this. We call it as a vesicle, and it consists of many neurotransmitters. And what is the neurotransmitter? Acetylcholine. Acetylcholine is a neurotransmitter which is present in majority of the organisms. So, this seminal vesicle consists of the neurotransmitters, the chemicals which convert the electrical impulses, and then it is transferred to the another neuron. So, the neurotransfer through the axon, it is like a electric impulse, but when it reaches a synapses, it becomes a chemical impulse. So, here what is transmitted? Neurotransmitters are transmitted from one to another in the form of acetylcholine. And now we are going to see the human nervous system. Yes, our human nervous system consists of three main types, children. One is a CNS. What is CNS? What is CNS? Yes, central nervous system. Central nervous system. CNS means central nervous system. Central nervous system, it consists of two parts. One is the brain. One is a brain and another one is a spinal cord. Spinal cord. So, first is central nervous system consists of brain and spinal cord. And another type of nervous system is a PNS. What is PNS? PNS is a peripheral nervous system. Peripheral nervous system, that is the nerves that arises from the brain and the nerves that arises from the spinal cord, we say it as a PNS. They together constitute a peripheral nervous system. So, the brain, the nerves that arise from the brain, right? We call it as a cranial nerves, and the nerves that arise from the spinal cord, we call it as a spinal nerves. What we call? Spinal nerves. So, the nerves that arise from the brain and the spinal cord, we say constitute a peripheral nervous system. And the another type of nervous system is a ANS. What is ANS? Autonomous nervous system. Autonomous nervous system. Autonomous nervous system is not controlled by the brain, right? It functions on its own. That is, for example, sneezing, right? When suddenly dust, when we expose to the dust, suddenly we close our eyelids, and on seeing a food we salivate. So, these are all the activities controlled by the autonomous nervous system. And the autonomous nervous system consists of two types of nerves. One is a sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. Sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. So, these are all the three types of nervous system, children. So, first one is CNS, central nervous system. Second one is PNS, peripheral nervous system, and ANS, autonomous nervous system. And next we are going to study about the CNS. I told you that the CNS consists of brain and the spinal cord. Brain and the spinal cord constitutes the spinal cord. These two comes under the central nervous system. So now we are going to study about the central nervous system. In that first we are going to study about the brain. The brain has brain is divisible into two. One is a cortex and another one is the medulla. Cortex is the outermost portion. So cortex, you can just look into this image, children. Some portion is very dark, right? On the edges it is very dark, right? So this regions we call it as a grey matter. Grey matter. And here, which is present inside the medulla, we call it as a white matter. White matter. They are responsible for transmitting the impulses. So from this we are going to study one more difference between the brain and the spinal cord. So this is the internal structure of the spinal cord. The one main difference between the brain and the spinal cord is that, children, here you can see, here the grey matter is present inside, that is in the medulla, and the white matter is present on the peripheral regions. It is a white matter. So this is the main difference between the brain and the spinal cord. In the brain, the grey matter is outside, but in the spinal cord, the grey matter is inside, and white matter is present inside the brain, and but here in the spinal cord, white matter is outside. So this is how you can compare the brain and the spinal cord. And next important thing we are going to study about the meninges. What is meninges? Meninges are the covering of the brain. Meninges are the membranes that cover the brain. So the meninges, the brain is covered by the three layers. For example, the first one is a dura mater. First one is a dura mater. Next, innermost membrane is a arachnoid membrane, and the innermost, it is a pia mater. It is a pia mater. So now what is the outermost membrane, children? Dura mater. Dura matter. Here only one T should come, right? But in grey matter, double T should come. So dura. Dura means tough. Dura means tough. Matter means membranes. So dura matter, it is very tough and it is present on the outermost layer. That is first it is covered by the skull, and next by the first skin, next by the skull, and inner to the skull, the first outermost layer is a dura mater, and next to the dura mater, what is present? Arachnoid membrane. Arachnoid. Arachnoid is web-like. It is a middle web-like and helps in cushioning the brain. When we receive any shock, this membranes, arachnoid, cushions the brain. So what is the middle layer, children? Arachnoid membrane. And next one, innermost layer is a pia mater. Pia mater. Pia means soft. Pia means soft, and matter, we know matter means membrane. So the innermost membrane, which is very soft because it is a layer which covers the brain. So it is very soft. So it is said to be the pia mater. So what are the three meninges, children? Outer dura mater, middle arachnoid membrane, and innermost pia mater. and these three are the meninges. From this they may ask a 2 mark question. What are all the meninges? What is meninges? The outermost covering of the brain. What are the types of meninges? You have to write dura mater, arachnoid membrane and pia mater. And here you have to know about one more thing, that is a meningitis. In Tamil we say it as a moolai kaachal, brain fever we say. What is this meningitis? The inflammation of the meninges. Suppose if due to some bacterial infection, if the meninges get inflamed, we say it as a meningitis. It may be caused due to some bacteria that enters into our blood. Some bacteria enter into our blood, and when it reaches the brain, it affects the meninges. So that we call it as a meningitis. Next we are going to discuss about the parts of the brain, right? Brain, it consists of 3 main parts. One is a forebrain, midbrain and the hindbrain. Forebrain consists of cerebrum. Forebrain consists of cerebrum, thalamus and hypothalamus. Just we shall discuss only the parts, children. So forebrain consists of cerebrum, which is the largest part of the brain, cerebrum. Next one is a hypothalamus, and just above the hypothalamus is the thalamus. Thalamus, hypo means below, below the thalamus, hypothalamus. So what are the 3 regions of the forebrain? Cerebrum, hypothalamus and thalamus. These are all the 3 parts under the forebrain. And next we are going to study about the midbrain. Right? Midbrain. The second part is the midbrain, and it is present between the forebrain and the midbrain. And the last part of the brain is the hindbrain. Hindbrain, it consists of cerebellum, which helps us in control, balance. Next, pons and medulla oblongata. These 3 constitutes the hindbrain. So what are the 3 parts of the brain, children? Forebrain, midbrain and hindbrain. Forebrain, cerebrum, hypothalamus and thalamus. Midbrain. Hindbrain, what are the 3 parts? Cerebellum, pons and medulla oblongata. So now let us recap what are all the things we studied, children. Yes, in the beginning, from the beginning we have studied about the transmission of impulse. We have studied how the impulse is transmitted. Transmission of impulse, right? And then we discussed about the neurotransmitter, that is the acetylcholine. Acetylcholine is a neurotransmitter, and then we discussed about the 3 types of nervous system. 3 types of nervous system, that is CNS, that is central nervous system, PNS, peripheral nervous system, and ANS, autonomous nervous system. And then we studied about the parts of the brain, right? What are all the parts? Forebrain, midbrain and hindbrain. And then we discussed about the meninges, outermost covering of the brain, and how the grey matter and the white matter are located in the brain and the spinal cord. This is the assessment given related to this topic, children. Go through it. With this session comes to an end. So far we have completed the transmission of impulse and the structure of the brain. In the description we have attached the study material, assessment and question bank for this lesson. Go through it and make sure how far you understood the topic. Thank you, children.